Hey folks, Mike Acton here of Array. I want to talk today about the Array DevSecOps solution. Here at Array, we like to provide IT capabilities. We want to deliver them at max speed using innovation, automation. Of course, we want them secure. Today, I have with me Bill Osterhout and Frank Manuel to discuss the Array DevSecOps solution. Both of these guys are accomplished senior engineers in Array, have many years of experience, and are definitely experts in the field. So let's move on and start getting into this content. First thing I want to do is set the stage just a little bit before I bring in these experts. So it's important to understand cloud native applications versus legacy applications. So on this particular chart, you can see the top has monolithic legacy applications, right? And you can see some major characteristics from time to release, development processes, et cetera, across the top. Monolithic time to release can be months, sometimes years for a major release. I mean, because you're dealing with hardware, you're dealing with legacy firmware, you're dealing with components that maybe you have to source. You have to go through extensive testing, right? You have to test everything because it's so hard to release and so big to release, you don't want to get it wrong. Also, that would lead to the waterfall process you can see there in the second thing. Won't get into the rest. The second one was very popular recently and still widely used is the N-tier or virtualized. This would be like VMware in a data center or maybe even VMware in a cloud. But this is kind of like the first generation or even second generation of virtualization before you get to commercial cloud and government clouds, et cetera, which are true clouds. Usually you find with the virtualized tier using VMs and VMware that you don't have true elasticity, right? Because you're limited by the number of servers available in your data center and storage for that matter as well. So that's kind of the end tier and some of the problems. You get down to the bottom one here, modern or cloud native applications. Well, number one, if you go all the way to the right, they're running in a true cloud now, which means they do have elasticity because there's not a limitation or there's no practical limitation to you on the number of VMs you can have, the number of servers are going to be available, the amount of storage that's available, the services that allow you to scale easily and scripting, whether it's using auto scaling in AWS or the similar service over in Azure. But here what you have is you're saying time to release weeks, sometimes days. Here at Array, we're in the hours, right? We can release stuff in hours. We build up a full solution that's automated end to end, and that pipeline is going. So when someone's at step 1, there's another team at step 9 or step 10 getting ready to release to pre-production and production, away it goes. But I do want to talk also a bit about the architecture here of this cloud native modern application. That would be that generally speaking, we like to see them in microservices or something similar. So it's a very componentized, well organized set of services that you can call and use and reuse, right? We like microservices. We think that's the best of breed right now. And then we like to put those applications in containers. The reason we want them in containers is then we can port them to any cloud. We can put them in Azure. We can put them in Google. We can move them from where they're at, maybe geographically. Maybe we have a performance issue. We can put them right near where the customer needs it and really eliminate a lot of that latency, right? So that's kind of what we're doing here. But the takeaway on the bottom, cloud native apps are designed for modern DevSecOps approaches. And so really, if you have a cloud native app, it really is a type of app that you want to apply to DevSecOps. Now that said, you can still use Jenkins or other, GitLab, whatever, in virtualized settings within a data center. You can still do that. You still should do that, right? Jenkins, Maven, JUnit, et cetera, right? What you're doing is automating a lot of the piece parts of your process, and you got to start somewhere. You can't go from legacy or to virtual, snap your fingers and you're cloud native. So with that said, let's move on. So what's the value of Array's DevSecOps solution, right? So we're trying to innovate at the speed of need. And so again, we're going to talk about, how our solution what the characteristics of our solution are, and give you a tailored view of one of the solutions that Bill Osterhout has made for one of our customers, and you're going to see how well thought out it is, and then we're going to talk about how valuable that is, right? So that's where we're going to go. Before we do that, just want to set up a couple things here. We're going to talk really quickly about the Agile methodology. What is DevSecOps in general, right? For people that might not know, what is continuous integration deployment? A little bit different than DevSecOps, but very important as well. And it feeds into the array solution and why our solution is so powerful. And then what does our solution deliver? And then finally, we're going to talk about some of the benefits, right? So let's start with the Agile methodology real quick. And the Agile methodology is very important. And I don't want people to be confused. When we talk about the Agile methodology, we're going back to the Agile Manifesto. And the Agile Methodology Manifesto are all about product management, product evolution, right? And what I mean by that is it's not about the technology. It's not about we're going to do another little bit of code. We're going to do another little something. It's about the product, right? So talk about the product you're trying to build and how you are going to quickly iterate and evolve that product by adding additional capability or building it out to the end desired state. For example, the classic example is the skateboard to Ferrari. And what does that mean? Well, it means the customer comes to you, the functional customer says, look, I need a Ferrari. And you as the IT department says, well, you know what? I can give you a skateboard right now. It's a mobile app. It does 90% of what you want. It's not perfect. It doesn't look great, but it works. And he's like, I'll take it, right? I'll take that today. He said, but I still want that Ferrari. And so you put together a plan to start evolving that skateboard to Ferrari. And then at the next iteration, maybe it's a skateboard with a handle. And then maybe the next iteration, it's a skateboard with a handle, but you put a seat on it, maybe a little electric. So now you got this little skateboard that's like a little electric car, can zip around. And over time, you start evolving with your plan to that Ferrari. And you do it as quickly as you can, right? This is not a waterfall process. This is a quick, iterative, Scrum sprint style process to evolve that product, right? And that's the key. And then the punchline is a lot of times your functional owner of the application will come back and say, you know what, I really didn't want a Ferrari after all. I really needed a pickup truck. And so as you were evolving, right, you didn't quite get to the Ferrari anyway, and then you pivot and you start developing or laying out the plan to get to a pickup truck. And again, this analogy, we're talking, skateboards or Ferraris or pickup trucks, but we're really talking about mobile applications. We're talking about integrated code. We're talking about data solutions. We're talking about in the IT domain, what's a solution look like there, right? So, but that's the Agile methodology. And I don't like when people confuse that with other things and they start saying, we're going to do Agile something else, right? It just means do stuff quick and cut corners. Now, that's not really what the Agile methodology is about. It's about evolution of a product. So enough there. So the next thing to talk about real quick is DevSecOps. And what is DevSecOps? And I'm going to bring in my compadres on this one. So DevSecOps, to me, just to start the conversation, is a teaming up of the development team, the security team, and the operations team, and those functions that they provide. So they're working in unison. Previously, a lot under waterfall, you had a development team doing development and then throwing packages, if you will, over the fence to operations who tried to install them and tried to run them. And the development team didn't really necessarily develop them for operations to do a good job. Security may not have been a first thought, right? It may have been an afterthought, or that we're going to try to do something else with. So to me, it's really the integration of these three functions that then produce IT capabilities: the development function, the security function, the operations function. And it's this team that is working together in a way that provides the best developed capability that is highly secure, and the security is integrated into what is developed. And it's built and integrated for operations. So, Bill, did anything else there you want to talk about on the DevSecOps? Did I miss anything? What are your thoughts on that?
No, Mike. I think you did a really great job of explaining that. It is the speed of delivery and the security of the code getting merged into that one streamlined process, getting the communication between the dev team and the operations team and the security team, the testing team. And, it absolutely aligns with that agile methodology that you stated before. I mean, the benefits, you're getting security baked into your development process rather than it being an outside layer, something that we have to worry about after the fact. So, yeah, I think you did a great job of explaining that. Frank, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I think that's a great job, guys. And I would add in too, right, some more benefits there with the ability of the testing, both at the unit level. You have the automation pieces there, and you can see you have the ability to rapidly work with that team, that DevSecOps team, to address any of those issues or problems or concerns that you have if you have a code failure or a deployment failure. So great job, Mike and Bill.
Great. Yeah, let's move on to the CICD. Bill, do you want to take that one? What are your thoughts on the CICD? What is it? Why is it important? And how does it compare and contrast a little bit to DevSecOps?
Yeah, when I look at CI/CD, for me personally, I look at it as bridging that gap between the development processes and the operation processes, and really integrating those automated tools. I look at it from how do we leverage various tools to complete that process. So to me, it is really focusing on more of the tools and technology perspective, and how do we really bring that automation forward and automating as much of those processes described in the DevSecOps methodology. What tools are we going to use to automate our security testing up front as a developer completes a code module or a sprint? You know, how are we going to do functional testing further down the line, and how are we going to deploy the module seamlessly into our various environments, our user first look environment, our test environment, our production environment, without being overly uh, burdening the operations team. So when I look at that whole CICD, it's throughout from beginning to end, development, test, to actually deploying those code modules into production. And for me, it's really focusing on what tools we're going to leverage in each one of those environments to accomplish that.
Yeah, yeah. And
Um,
for me, Bill, it's about from a functional perspective, it's like come up with a requirement, for that product. Going back to that agile discussion, and then we're going to take the next iteration of that product in a sprint or whatever, and sprints about a 1 week, intense solutioning, if you development session, if you will, and then you start there into the process, and then so that gets developed, then it gets integrated like into your CM, gets integrated into the code baseline, gets tested through automated testing, and that whole thing is a pipeline that takes that next sprint from the agile plan, if you will, the product plan, and puts it in the pipeline, uses automation, and at the other end of the pipeline, that secure, tested, integrated code pops out and gets in the user's hands, right? In their mobile app or their web app or whatever they're using. And to me, that is the big thing. So CI/CD to me is a pipeline from start to finish, from idea to getting that idea into the hands of the user, right? So yeah,
right.
good stuff there.
Really is providing capability as quickly as possible through leveraging maximizing automation as much as possible.
Right. And so let's
Good,
move on
good,
to
good,
the
good point.
to oh, sorry, go ahead, Frank.
I was just going to throw in, guys, that that's a great point with the fully integrated system, right? As we talk about this, right, from an architectural, both a business and a process perspective, what we're articulating here is we're picking up the functional requirements, and we're taking that all the way from functional documentation of the requirements all the way through and showing the actual release of the capability, as you both mentioned, right, at a very rapid, secure, automated process, and depending on the environment, right? That's the value of what we can deliver at a very rapid pace.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and something for project managers, right, to consider when you have a CI/CD pipeline laid out with every step well understood, you can really start overlaying the time it took to get a particular piece of functionality from concept to the user. You can also overlay that with cost and effort, how much it costs to move that piece of, so you start getting this illumination of project data that really has been hard to get in the past, through traditional waterfall, right? So anyway, you can really get that and start comparing things. Also, I mean, clearly, if you're deploying to the cloud too, you really can see exactly. You can meter the hardware, software, whatever in the cloud. So anyway, let's move on for sake of time here. So what does Array's DevSecOps solution deliver? Well, let's talk about again what it is. Our solution at Array, we have a base solution with a number of characteristics that we put in, right? And a couple things. Number one is it is supporting the Agile methodology. That's key. That we really want to be able to bring that into play. So we use an Agile product methodology, planning, evolution process for the product, and then that develops the sprints that then will feed into our CI/CD. And we're looking to go as fast as possible. We are trying to fail fast, to use that word, right? So in other words, use automated testing, use integration testing as quickly as we can going forward. But another key tenet of our solution set is that for our customers, we really want to know what platform they're going to be running on and using, right? So is it going to be AWS? Is it going to be Azure? Is it going to be Google Cloud Platform? Is it going to be something else like Salesforce? Whatever it's going to be, we really want to look at the native tools that particular platform provides. And we do that because we find that there is more value using that native tool set than there is bringing your own set of Jenkins and Maven and JUnit and whatever. That stuff's great for development. It's great to get set up. But if you know you're going to be in Azure or AWS, it makes a lot more sense to use that particular base tool set to manage your product evolution and the iterations of your sprints, along with your CI/CD pipeline going forward, and the tools that, again, bring your dev, sec, and ops teams together to collaborate. It's really set up for that. It's set up to deliver there, and you will evolve. So once we get you, say you're going to work in Azure for Azure DevOps using DevSecOps in Azure, you will evolve your processes as Azure brings you new best practices, right? So that is a really good way to go too. Another thing we really like is GitLab. GitLab is a fully, well thought out platform agnostic tool. But again, it's something we look at. It depends on the customer on whether or not that's the best fit. So we look at that in our solution. Bill, anything you want to talk about in, how we approach the Array DevSecOps solution?
Well, I think, a couple of things you pointed out, Mike, is that our philosophy is to look at the native cloud service provider solution up front, and not try to bring in a lot of third-party tools that are unnecessary if we can meet the needs with what's available to us. We also look at the customer partners' requirements or what they may already have. So if they have licensing for a particular set of tools, we would rather use things that they already have versus trying to go out and purchase additional tools and increase costs and that nature. So our philosophy is to really take a holistic look at this from not just a best in breed, but what's available and what we can use and what really meets the customer's requirements and will be the most optimized for that customer. So
yeah, good puts there. Good puts. Frank, anything to add on our Array DevSecOps solutions that we want the audience to know?
I think you guys have covered a very good job with both of those. And again, I think we've articulated the tip to tail process here all the way through. Again, Array's got the ability to I'll throw out a new term here, but I'll call the IAC in this here, the infrastructure as code that ties into these pipelines. Not to go too deep, but this is part of that automation stuff that Mike and Bill are talking about, and it's kind of some of those value streams that we get out of this is being able to build those libraries of reusable content and solutions to be able to help other customers, and as Mike mentioned, forward that to be able to get our customer sets the most effective capability at the fastest rate possible.
Yeah, that's a great point here. I mean, I think infrastructure as code is a huge part of what we're doing. So we're automating not just the process. We're automating the infrastructure, the spin up of the infrastructure. We're really trying to do. I'll say this: everything is code, right? So we want everything to be JSON or scripted code that can create the environment, control the environment. So we do it once, and if we have to redeploy, those scripts are ready to go all the time. So really, that's a great point. Everything is code. Maybe we get into a little bit more discussion of the application itself. We really want to focus on the DevSecOps solution today, but when we do applications, we are trying to automate everything so that it is as easy as possible. It's build it once and be able to manage it and maintain it with minimal effort going forward, so you can really put your time and effort into adding more value for the user. That's really kind of a philosophy. Bill, let's move on to the next slide here. I really want to talk about the solution that you designed for one of our partner customers. So let's do that. And with that, we'll talk about the benefit. Try to hit on the benefits as we talk about it. First, let's talk about let's overview it, and then let's talk about some of the benefits.
Yeah. Real quickly, just set the stage. This particular customer had a legacy application that was a mainframe application, had about 500,000 lines of mainframe code, and an additional 500,000 of user front end, VB6, VB.NET, very legacy Windows forms-based application. One of their initial requirements was to modernize the application, but keep it in a like-for-like, from a user interface perspective, like-for-like format. So when we went to the new system, it would be familiar to the current user base and wouldn't require a lot of additional training. That being said, they are also a Microsoft oriented shop. They had a lot of Microsoft Visual Studio licensing. So we wanted to keep that theme. We didn't want to get too far away from what they're familiar with today with the new system. When we did our analysis, we looked at where they wanted to go from a current database, current file store. They had a outdated, unsupported file store system that we wanted to migrate them to something that was current, modernized, and fully supported. So here's the solution that we came up with. We are going to leverage the Microsoft Azure cloud, and we are also going to leverage the Microsoft Azure DevOps solution as much as possible. But we do have third-party tooling in here that completes our DevSecOps solution. So starting here,
Bill,
sure.
one quick question on this.
Yeah.
So this customer, if I recall correct, they were already a Microsoft-based shop, just more in legacy code, and hadn't been in the cloud yet. But they had some developers and teams that understood Microsoft technologies in general, such as things like Visual Studio, right? So they understood that. Some of the tools that you see on this list, right, specific tools, were tools that either they used, or if they didn't, we considered best of breed and had a conversation. Man, this is a partnership with this customer, right? It's certainly we were the ones that designed the solution, but we certainly worked with them to make sure that we were delivering the solution that was best for their team set. So is that right? This was a Microsoft-based solution that did not have any DevSecOps. Is that right?
Yes, that's absolutely right. They were a more of a waterfall ad hoc a shop today, right? So they didn't have any kind of automation in their deployment process. They're Windows based, so they're on Windows servers and an on-prem infrastructure. They're transitioning to a SQL Server database, but that hasn't been fully completed yet. Again, like you stated, VB user front end, VB web front end, COBOL back end for a lot of the batch jobs and legacy batch processing and stored procedures and things of that nature. So they were really looking to get into a more of a modernized application from a languages perspective. And I should state that our solution here is going from VB and COBOL to a C# code base. And what we're going to do is we're going to use an automated code conversion process. And you'll see that in this diagram here, where we, over here to the left, kind of the second, yep, there you go, the TSRI Janus Studio. So we have a partner that we've done several of these code conversion projects on, and mainframe conversions to a modernized code base. They're going to be assisting us with taking that legacy COBOL code in VB6, VB.NET, and transforming it to C#. So that you can see, though, they're a part of our DevSecOps process, and they'll be kicking things off, and the converted code will come to us in the form of C# modules. We're going to containerize it, so we will be getting container files to deploy to our Azure cloud environment. On the very top, we also have our cloud engineering team who's going to be working on that infrastructure as code components that Frank stated earlier. So we're going to be using the native Azure ARM templates along with Ansible and Terraform to build out that cloud infrastructure through code. And they're going to get started in parallel with the TSRI team who's doing the code conversion. And as you can see, our pipelines are going to ultimately take and combine the Docker files with our infrastructure as code into a Azure Artifacts repository, which can be ultimately deployed through our MS build scripts, Jenkins pipelines to either any of the environments we've designated or targeted those builds for. So in this particular case, we wanted a user first look environment, and we can have multiple user first looks depending on what version of the code we want to present to the customer or the product owners for verification, making sure that we're absolutely meeting the requirements. In our case, we had a like-for-like requirement from a user interface, so we can deploy the user interface modules and make sure that they are meeting that like-for-like requirement in our user first look environments. We can also deploy versions of the code to pre-prod for more functional testing, more of our security testing and performance testing before we actually deploy it to the production environment. So we have, through our DevSecOps solution, we have the capability to work on multiple sprints, multiple phases of the project in parallel. You can see down below, kind of in the middle section of our pipeline here, we have two Agile teams working in parallel on some new requirements. So this is functionality that isn't part of that legacy application. And as soon as they get the required converted code modules that they need to interface with, they can then start deploying into our user first look environment. So yep.
I just wanted to mention that, again, as I recall this project, right, you're showing two development teams, right? And you're showing at the very, so there's a number of teams here, right? Let's just review them. At the top is a cloud engineering team, kind of doing your infrastructure as code. Then you have your TSRI Janus Studio team converting the legacy code into modern C# code. And that goes into the Git source repository. Then you have two development teams, but in reality, we're showing two development teams, but there's many development teams on this project. I mean, there could be up to 7, I believe, in the development alone in these teams. And then at the very bottom is the product owner. Remember, product owner comes from the Agile term, right? So this product owner is a customer person or organization, but really a person that owns the product, that is laying out the priorities and the evolution that we're working with to break down their needs onto these agile scrum boards and then feeding it to these many teams, 7 teams here, 8, 9 teams at least, maybe 10 teams, working in parallel and in an orchestrated fashion to make sure things are coming together at the right time down into the Azure artifacts for ultimate, UFL or user first look to staging to production release. So that mobile app gets into the hands of the user, right? So that's what's going on there as this goes forward. And you can also see some of the testing, etc. I just want to make those couple points, Bill, and back to you.
Yeah, absolutely. For the sake of trying to keep the diagram as clean as possible, and we do have a lot to depict in this diagram, but it isn't really as complex as it's shown here. Once these pipelines are established, and you go through the various approval gates, it's fully automated. We don't need operations folks taking code modules and deploying it to each server. That's the beauty of this solution, right? It's fully push button deployment, leveraging as much of the Azure DevOps capabilities as possible. As you pointed out, Mike, we're using Azure boards to manage our Agile Scrum teams. We're using, the Azure Artifacts capability. We're using the Azure pipelines along with Jenkins. We're using Azure Application Insights for monitoring and feedback and evaluating the performance of the releases that go out. The product owner is fully integrated into the process. So they're there in the beginning to verify our backlogs, our sprints requirements, along with doing the user first look testing to validate that the requirements have been met through the development cycle. So it's a very clean solution for this particular customer based on their requirements, right? And the fact that they are heavily experienced in Microsoft development technologies, it really meets their needs.
Yeah,
hey, Bill, can I jump in here and ask a quick question?
Absolutely, Frank.
Hey, would you say from that perspective, as we develop this, would you consider this? It's maybe your opinion, but I would say this is kind of more of a full stack development as from a skill set perspective. As you're walking through and articulating to our customers, we're teaching and understanding how the whole process works, all the way from the requirements all the way into the actual implementation of the code being deployed, to the user seeing that code function in front of them on their browser.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's the intent of this solution, Frank. Yep.
Hey,
absolutely.
Bill, quick question for you just to focus. So we talked a lot about the dev part of DevSecOps, right? We talked about that quite a bit at the beginning. Where does the security portion come in to this particular, what makes this DevSecOps versus just DevOps?
Sure. So in each phase of the build process, you'll see kind of in the middle here, we have automated unit and security testing via XUnit and SonarQube. So before the code modules can even be deployed out into our Azure artifacts, they are running through those test automation scripts. And if there are any security vulnerabilities flagged, they go immediately back to the development team to be fixed before they can move through the pipeline. And as you'll see when we get to some of the various environments, particularly the staging pre-prod environment, we have some security penetration testing going on, so more elaborate security testing before any of those code modules can actually reach the production environment. The idea here is that the security is moved to the left in the development cycle so that we can immediately identify any of those vulnerabilities early in the development cycle and get those fixed before they are moved on to the next stage in the pipeline.
Right. Hey, so I remember again, I think from this I was part of the project I was involved in. I believe that that you said one time that we are implementing RMF and DoD level security into our images. Can you talk about that for a second?
Yeah, absolutely. We're taking those requirements and baking those into each one of those automated test functionality. So at that level, we will meet all of those RMF requirements before the code is actually released. That's part of the array process, and that's part of our array DevSecOps philosophy.
Yeah. Does this customer need DoD level security? Are we providing DoD level security for this customer?
For this particular customer, they must meet RMF level. So not to the DoD level, but we comply with that RMF requirement. So our tests and the tools that we use are compliant to that level. So it's baked into the process.
Gotcha. So all of our customers benefit from kind of DoD military grade level security, whether they're a DoD agency or not, or a DoD customer or not, Department of Defense customer or not.
Yes.
Gotcha. Okay. So good stuff here. Frank, anything to add to this conversation?
I think you guys covered that one really well. That's a good a good overview and walkthrough of exactly what the DevSec and Ops pieces are. One thing I will add is, as Bill mentioned, right, the speed and the ability to rapidly deploy, like the first user look piece of this. So one thing I will key in is we with the infrastructure as code ability, as we mentioned, the ability to stand these environments up and get certain sets of users with certain sets of functionality based on a particular code branch absolutely helps and helps the development team as well, because as the team looks at the requirement, tries to understand exactly what the customer is looking for, doing the first look allows a developer to take that input and maybe they thought they understood it correctly as the requirement was wrote, but implement it and then quickly get that back out to the consumer and allow them to see, is this what you really wanted? Did you want this drop down button, or were you looking for something else, right? So I just wanted to make sure that folks understand this is a very rapid, very, very quick process, and it's meant to be reused as much as possible. So you're going to see a lot of gain in efficiencies, as well as some applications see anywhere between 40 and 60% for optimization of resource utilization. But each customer is different, and each set of requirements are a little bit different. But I'll turn it back over to you guys.
Great points there. Go ahead, Bill.
I was just going to point out one more thing. Frank, you pointed out that the ability to quickly spin up these environments, and that is really one of the key things that we focused on with this customer in discussing the benefits of the cloud and the elasticity of the cloud, how we could through that infrastructure's code and automation, we can bring these environments up, do what we need to do, and destroy them when no longer in use. And they really understood that. Now, having come from a on-prem environment, it was a little hard for them to grasp at first, but as we talk through this, they can really see the benefit of having that ability within the cloud to utilize those elastic capabilities. So, to your point, Frank, having the ability to do that, quickly spin things up, show it to the customer, and have them verify that exactly the requirements, exactly what they're looking for is being met is very crucial. The other thing I didn't mention in here, Mike, you talked about microservices and getting to a totally cloud native application. As we go through the code automation conversion process, there is a capability to identify and automatically convert some of these modules to microservices based. So it's not depicted in this diagram, but that is the end goal, is to get to a cloud native application that leverages those containers and microservices that you talked about earlier.
Yeah, great. Well, let's wrap it up a little bit. I mean, we're going a little bit long. We don't want to go too long. So again, this is the array DevSecOps solution. This is a specific example implementation for Azure that we did for a particular customer. Again, they were coming from a Microsoft background, so Azure made more sense and Azure DevOps made more sense as they had familiarity with Visual Studio, SQL Server, VB6, and some other legacy Microsoft, Microsoft Forms, etc. So we worked with them to arrive at this best solution for them. Again, the array solution really looks at a number of characteristics of what is best in a DevSecOps solution for a particular program or customer, or like we like to call it, partner customers, because we really do partner with these customers to understand what they need to get it going. Some of the real benefits of this of our solution is that it's easy for us to tailor to a new customer very quickly. So it doesn't cost a lot to redesign a solution, right? We have experience in Azure, AWS, and we're picking up a lot of experience now in Google Cloud Platform as well. We have a lot of legacy experience as well with VMware, base Jenkins style, CICD, Cloud Bees, and other technologies like that. GitLab, newer, but still a little bit different. So we can look at this pretty quickly and arrive at the best solution for a customer once we get to know where they're at, what they understand, what the technology set is they're using, et cetera. Again, this solution may look a little complicated, but it is really not when you look at the different roles, right? So it's just a number of parallel team roles working together that is well coordinated to deliver as quickly and inexpensively as possible new capabilities to the field. So I think that's it. Bill, anything you want to say to wrap up?
No, Mike, I think we've probably gone over our time limit a little bit, and I think it's a very, as you stated, tailorable solution, and it really does take into consideration all of the requirements from our customer partners.
Yeah, Frank, anything you want to put?
No, thanks, Mike. I think we covered it really well. I appreciate the discussion. Thanks, guys.
Yeah, great. Hey, folks, if you want any additional information from Array, you can contact us at sales@arrayinfotech.com. Send us an email. One of us will get back with you, and we will continue the conversation. If there's anything we missed, leave us a comment, and we'll follow up with you. Thanks a lot. Have a great one.